Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la
ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. We thank Allah, we praise Allah, and we seek assistance and forgiveness from Allah. So it's almost time for fasting. We're about 2 weeks away from starting the fast of Ramadan. And I thought I will start talking about fasting to help us to encourage ourselves to get ready for the fast. But one of the most important things that the Quran say about fasting is that it creates self-restraint. And so what is the need for self-restraint is the question we want to ask. And also, how does the individual who engage in the practice of self-restraint or self-control help on an individual level, on a personal level, and how does it help a society? So there was a study done at the University of Florida around why do criminals engage in crime, and it was discovered that the majority of criminals in the sample who got involved in crime come from communities where self-control was not something that was encouraged. So when we look in the Quran, for example, in this verse where Allah says, so we find that in this verse that there is a link between justice, self-control, and Allah consciousness, or a higher consciousness. So basically what Ramadan does, or the fasting does, is help you to learn to control yourself. And by controlling yourself on that personal level, you create justice for yourself. So you're not going to indulge in things or overindulge in things that you know that is going to be harmful for you, because you've had a period where you've trained the body to restrain itself, so that you become the master of yourself and your desires, and not vice versa. And then if we have individuals like that in a community, one can just imagine what type of higher consciousness community one then does develop. And this higher consciousness is what leads people to become more just in society. So often Allah speaks about this self-control in many different other situations. For example, Allah says, "O you who believe, when you hold your secret councils, it is not for iniquity and hostility and to revolt against the Prophet, but to do it for righteousness and for self-restraint." And then Allah again says, "And be conscious of Allah, to whom you will be brought back." So again, self-control or self-restraint is related to Allah consciousness, to taqwa. So basically what fasting does, it teaches us self-control, and from this self-control we learn to live in a higher consciousness as human beings, and with this higher consciousness we help to make society workable. And that is the end result of fasting. So the verse that I've quoted in the beginning summarizes the benefits of fasting, which is mastery over the carnal desires and mastery over the lower self. So by denying the body during the fast the things that is otherwise lawful, such as food and water and drink and sex and cigarettes, we help the body to live in this higher consciousness. So fasting boosts the self-control, which in turn leads to this higher consciousness and to social responsibility and awareness of our environment. So obviously when you fast, your senses are being heightened. You become more consciousness of the preciousness of water, for example, or the preciousness of food that you sometimes just take for granted. That's there, you eat it, but we're not conscious of those who don't have. So fasting helps us to become conscious of these things. Allah says that fast for the fixed number of days. And the fixed number of days is the days of Ramadan. So in some calendars it's 29, in some calendars it's 30 days. But Allah says that if any of you are ill or you are on travel, then make it up with days later. And for those who cannot fast at all, there is the feeding of one person that is poor. So for every day of the fast that you don't fast, that you have to feed the poor. So now you might think that, oh, this is a nice alternative. So if I don't fast, I'm just going to feed the poor. And so Allah knows this. And therefore Allah says, but he that will give more of his own free will, it is better for him. And it is better for you that you fast, if only you do. So this is Aisha's favorite part, if only you knew. Then Allah says in another verse, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. Allah says it was in this month of Ramadan that we have started to reveal the Quran as a guidance to humankind, making things clear in guidance and in clear evidence. So whoever witnesses this month should fast. And again Allah reminds us, but if you are ill or on a journey, then you may fast days later. Allah says Allah intends ease and for you and not difficulty, and for you to complete the period and to glorify Him at the end of it, in that He had guided you, and perhaps through this you will become grateful. So it has become a beautiful practice in Islam during the month of Ramadan that Muslims engage with the Quran. But how do we engage with the Quran? Do we just read it in the Arabic and not understanding it? Or do we really engage with it in such a way that it helps to inspire us, to motivate us to fast, and also to extract the lessons from the Quran? The word fasting in Ramadan, in Arabic means siyam, and siyam means to leave something or to avoid something for a particular period. Now you will see the contrasting and the difference between how the Quran talks about fasting and how Hadith talks about fasting. Hadith, because it is orally narrated, it has a sort of a different ring to it. As when you read from the Quran. Now, most of these hadith that I've taken out are hadith to encourage the believers to fast. And it almost sounds like trying to score brownie points with God, when you read this hadith. But as I said previously also, when I quote hadith, we're not throwing hadith out with the like you throw the baby with bathwater and all. But we take the hadith that does help us and does encourage us. And so let me read some of these to you. It says, it's reported in Ahmad that fasting will intercede for the person on the day of judgment and will say, O Lord, I prevented him from his food and physical desires during the day, so let me intercede for him. So according to this, the fasting will intercede on your behalf on the day of judgment. It's said in Muslim that the smell that comes from the mouth of a fasting person is preferred by Allah than the scent of musk. Whoever fasts one day for the sake of Allah will remove him a distance of 70 years from the hellfire. There's a few more. It says, whoever fasts one day seeking the pleasure of Allah, if that day is the last day of his life, he will enter paradise. The Prophet Muhammad has said that whoever fasts Ramadan out of faith and with the hope of reward, all his previous sins will be forgiven. In paradise there is a gate called Ar-Rayyan, through which those who fast will enter, and no one will enter it except the fasting person. When they have entered it, the door will be closed and no one else will enter through it. So such hadith might help to motivate the person to fast, but I personally do believe that one should fast not just for brownie points with Allah, but we should fast for the pleasure of Allah and also to get the personal and the social benefits that the fasting provides. In fasting, the consciousness of the environment is also raised, and one should be more aware of the needy and the hungry. So let us fast for these practical benefits, and let us bring a higher consciousness to fasting and an internal motivation, so that the result of our fasting is not only for personal gain, but also for the upliftment of society and a heightened collective consciousness of humanity.